Good morning and welcome to another XCM webinar session today. My name is Albert Jansen van Vieren and I'm coming to you directly from my home. I hope all of you had a good Easter weekend for those of you who celebrated Easter and a good break. Today we're having another session. We will be looking at accounting demystified, brought to you by Millen Mehari. So as last time again, I'm coming to you from my home, from my room, where all of you are probably at home. If you're in South Africa, well, lockdown would have ended tomorrow, but it's been extended for another 2 weeks. As is the same for all of our clients and non-clients, we have people dialed in on the session from Nigeria, Kenya, Mauritius, Australia, and Europe. And everyone that I've spoken to in the past, well, we're all in the same condition, so from home. So again, I need to put an apology. If you see a child running in, if you hear a dog barking, if you hear someone mowing the lawn, well, I think that's just part of a situation that all of us are in currently. If we get to the session today, Millen is going to present to us on Accounting Demystified. She's going to use Calypso as a backbone just to run it through. So today's session is going to be a bit different to the previous sessions. Today's session is going to be a bit more a training style session. She will touch on accounting principles, but just using a system for that. So at any point where you might have any questions that you want to ask, we will be answering questions at the end. So if you go in the middle of your screen at the bottom, there's a button called Q&A. So you can submit questions at any point throughout the session. We're not going to use the raise hand functionality to answer questions live. Millen's session is going to be about 40 minutes. So at the end, she will be answering questions. Just because of the nature of today's session, there could be some questions that is very specific to your bank or your organization. So those questions, if we can't answer that here, we can have a breakout session with yourself, or we can answer those sessions there. If you have any questions that you want to ask pertaining specifically to your bank, you're more than welcome to email us on axiom@undileysolutions.com, and we can set up a call, and you can get time with Millen just to walk through that. We are going to use a bit of a polling system for some questions today, as we have done in the past. If you are joining us for the first time today, you may be not familiar with it. I'm going to share a quick poll with you just to practice. So what is asking you, so you can at any point just answer this poll. There will be a poll coming up throughout the session so what is your perception of capital markets accounting? You can now fill in any of these options here. If you can see, I'm seeing a couple of answers coming through. It's just one big black box. It's just too difficult to reconcile and explain. If done well, it saves time and money. It's not that complicated. I've got no idea. I'm probably in that last box, and this is where I'm going to introduce Millen. So Millen, welcome to Axiom today.
Thank you, Albert, and thanks for everybody for joining our webinar today.
I am so glad I hear Millen's voice, because at one point I was worried if she's not here, then I'm going to have to take over. I've multiple times when we've done projects, I've introduced Millen as my favorite accountant, purely just for the fact that I don't really want to do the accounting. I know it's debits and credits from Millen. You're going to just explain it to us and demystify it. Switch on your video that people can see that it's truly you on the other side of that screen.
No.
So I've got the results coming through. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to share some of the results here with you so that you can see it in Millen. This will just give you a bit of idea of your audience. So 13% of the people says accounting is just one big black box. 21% says it's too difficult to explain and to reconcile. 50% of the people say, well, it saves time and money when implemented correctly. 1% or 4% of one person says it's not that complicated. That is great to hear. And then another 13% says, I have no idea what you are talking about, because that is great. That is what a session is about. Yeah, so this should give you a bit of idea of your audience, Millen, today.
Thank you, Albert. Can you see my video now? I was struggling a bit.
I can see your video, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, Millen, I'm almost going to hand over to you. So next 40 minutes, the screen is all yours. Just Millen is going to switch off a video today just because it's going to be more of a training demo style. So there's going to be a lot of moving screens. So video is not going to be on, but at the end when we answer questions, your video would be back on. Again, Q&A in the middle, submit questions at any time. Millen, and just before we get in, I'm just going to ask one or two couple of questions to you. I know you're going to use some terms during this training. And I think it's good to explain just for mere mortals. So you're going to use a term trial balance or TB. What is it?
So a trial balance is the aggregation of all your accounts into a different segregation that you've already predefined. So it could be aggregated by currency, it could be aggregated by expense and income or assets or liabilities. It's just basically aggregating all the postings that are generated on a daily basis and presenting it in a more readable or more meaningful format.
I'm putting you on a spot now because I'm just breaking it down for mere mortal people. What is a general ledger? You're going to talk about it as well.
So a general ledger is the bank's book of accounts, and usually the general ledger for the bank will host everything that the bank does, from retail to investment banking to the capital markets. And on a daily basis, each of those areas will send their accounting entries sometimes at a detailed level or mostly on an aggregated level to the general ledger. And basically, that's the book of the bank. So that's where salary gets paid, how much income that the bank has made overall, and yeah, profits, dividends, everything will be accounted for from the general ledger.
I've got two last questions to you. You're gonna use the term simple.
Q&A is there.
No, but I'm breaking it down here. You're gonna use the term simple transfer, which I know is a Calypso term. What is that in the general accounting world?
So a simple transfer it's not really a type of product, or it's a type of transactions that banks usually do if they want to initiate a single payment or a receipt. So for example, if you have to pay for your SWIFT charges, then it's not really an FX product, it's not a loan or deposit, it's not a bond. You will use a simple transfer to initiate that type of transaction. And as the name says, it's quite simple. Either you're receiving or you're paying funds.
And last thing, you're going to use the term processing organization or PO. And that's my last question. What is that?
Okay, processing organization is the entity itself represented in Calypso. Most organizations have one entity or one treasury department, so they will be represented in Calypso or in the other trading platforms that they use as one entity. But if it comes to some of our clients, where they have different representatives in different countries, then they will have different entities and there will be a link between those entities. For example, if a bank in South Africa has a branch in Swaziland or in UK, there will be two entities created in Calypso or processing organizations created in Calypso, and they will trade independently. Their P&L, their risk, their accounting, their back office process will be separate. But if they have to deal with between themselves, then there will be a physical deal created in Calypso between the two processing organizations.
Good. Okay, that's it. That's me for now. Millen, I'm handing back to you. Session is yours for the next 40 minutes. We'll have some Q&As in the middle. You guys can submit at any point. Thanks, Millen.
Thank you, Albert. So this is my fun slide for today. It's very difficult to make accounting fun, so I have decided to add a bit of humor in it. Today I'll be covering, as Albert mentioned, simple transfer. It's a very simple product, but it will let us go through the accounting entries from the beginning to the end. In terms of agenda, we'll be focusing mainly in terms of account creation. The first process in Calypso to do accounting is by creating account in a accounts window. Using this very basic window, and at the beginning of the process, accounts should be created correctly, or else it will impact everything that's created or used after the posting is generated. Second is account attributes. This is also related to the account creation. It's the same screen, but I have decided to also focus a bit more on it because it impacts your trial balance and the way that your reporting end of day will look like. We'll go through the accounting rules, accounting events. Finally, we'll look at the posting generated once we've booked a simple transfer. And finally, we'll look at our balance reports.
Millen, just a quick thing. I couldn't see your screen there. So just if you can maybe just share your screen from your side.
100%. Thanks, Albert. Okay, so this will be our agenda, as I've just explained. So off to Calypso. I have switched off my video. So I'm on the main entry for the Calypso accounting session. I'm going to start by showing you what we've created just for this demo purposes. We've created a Calypso and Dilla PO. So I'll be using this processing organization throughout my session. It's a very it's a South African entity. It has very basic contacts. So you can see I've just created a generic contact for it because we want to be focusing more on the back office side of things. To enable me to book the simple transfer deal, I have booked or I have created settlement instructions. And lastly, I have also created a counterparty. For all the currencies that I'll be booking, mainly for ZAR and USD. So for any deal that we have in Calypso, obviously we need the very building blocks, which is the processing organization, the legal entity, the counterparty, currency setup. So everything in this environment is already preset. So we can actually go and look into the actual accounting processes. In terms of accounting, the main screen that we look at is this screen. So we're going to start with the first tab, which is the account. I have already pre-opened the account that I have created just to save time. So I have created the first account is the settle account. A settle account, as most of you know, is used for nostro settlement or any cash settlement. Usually settle accounts are not attached to a specific book or a specific product type. They are very generic. They are attached to the processing organization and the currency. Other than that, there is no attributes or there is no child account created for settle accounts. The reason being is if there is a nostro account, for example, a USD account that the bank uses, that account can be used for all the settlements that are initiated from Calypso, unless there is any, unless the bank has multiple nostro accounts for the same currency, and then they will go and select the particular nostro account that they want to initiate for the transaction. But usually most banks have one nostro account per client or per processing organization, and will represent that in Calypso using the accounts window. The second set of accounts that I have created are the actual income, expense, asset, and balance sheet accounts. Those accounts can be shared between different products and between different counterparties. So So in this case, we call it a master account or a parent account. You create one master account, for example, this training account interest. The processing org can be multiple, so it can be used across multiple processing orgs, and the currency can be multiple. So you kind of set a rule to say, this is the account that I want to use for my master. Then you go and specify under the attributes window. You want to specify to say, for each combination that I have specified here, please create a separate child account. So in this example that I have set up, we have a processing org as one of the criteria, a posting currency, account name, and a book where the trade is being booked. Using this criteria, Calypso will use the master account plus criteria that have been defined here to create a child account that is applicable to the balance report and posting generation. Here, we've added a tilde on the line. This doesn't really have any use, except that once the concatenated child account is created, the account itself, it's more readable. I'll cover this once we've created some postings in the process. The next building block for accounting is the accounting rules. You'll find it in the same place under accounting rules section. So the first block, I'm going to start from the right side and I'll go into the left side. So under book link, this is where we specify if our accounting rule is held for trading or held to maturity. I have created a simple transfer rule under a trading book. On this configuration, we specify what gets filtered where. So in this example, for if in any trading book, a simple transfer is booked, that is the trading book. If the product type is simple transfer, and I have added an SD filter, which is a filtering mechanism used in Calypso. What I'm here saying is, if it's a simple transfer, and if the simple transfer subtype, because we can have different subtypes of simple transfer, is interest, please use this accounting rule. And the last part is where we attach the accounting rule. Obviously, we have to create the accounting rule first so that we can come here and attach it. But in a logical explanation, or when Calypso actually generates the postings, it goes through this criteria first before it actually gets into the accounting rule and say, what do we need to debit and credit? Next, I'm going to go into the configuration area. That's basically saying, how do we actually set up this accounting rule specified here? This is the rule that I have showed you here. I'm going to the configuration window now. So in this session, we won't be able to cover each button and each process for actually configuring Calypso. I'm trying to explain more on the process and what do we need to cover and what does the accounting rule link to book link and the definition in the accounts. So on this configuration, I have an event called CSDA settled and my debit and credit accounts. How we read this is, if the amount that's coming through from booking a deal is a positive amount, in a simple explanation, Calypso is saying, please debit this account and credit the settle account. You can see the settle account doesn't have any GL account attached to it because this is usually picked up from the settlement instruction and the transfer of the trades that you've actually booked. The one that we need to specify on account label is for normal accounts or for non-settle accounts. If I have to double click on this account, it takes me to the account that I have created, to the master account, and here is the attribute that I have already defined. If you look at the definition window, this is the name of the rule that I have created, which is applicable here, and some other information or additional information that we need to include in terms of, is it a daily closing? What pricing environment do we have to use? From this section, we have an event called CSTA settled. Calypso has a predefined list of events that we can use, and each event has a specific purpose. So for example, if it's a valuation event, it will be triggered by valuation schedule task, and it will only generate valuation related postings. In this case, we've picked a CSTA settled event, which is related to a transfer settlement at the back of the deal. So I'm going to look at the CSTA settled event. That is the final block in terms of generating accounting or postings from Calypso. Just waiting for the window to open, takes a bit of time. This is the event that's already predefined. You can also find this by product on this section. This event is triggered by a canceled and receipt of payment. Once the event is created and triggered, the accounting posting or the accounting rule attached to it will impact debit and credit the pre-specified accounts. Now I'm going to move on to booking the deal. This is the window for Calypso for booking a simple transfer transaction. The information that's required on the deal is very basic. We need to book the counterparty, which in my case is Bank ZA. We have the processing organization, because some organizations, as we mentioned earlier, might have multiple processing organizations. And delay PO training. We have a book that we've created for this purpose, and delay LCY, because we are booking a ZA transaction, and the transfer type or the simple transfer type is interest. I'll be booking a deal for 100 Rand. I'm going to save the deal. Deal is on a pending status. So my deal has moved to a verified status, which is the final status in Calypso to transact or to initiate transfers and messages. This is the back office window, which is where all the settlement instructions, messages, and postings will be hosted. Settlement instructions are from the processing organization in the Calypso. The counterparty has been added. That is a default that has been picked. In terms of transfers, this is the transfer window whereby the actual payment and receipt of the payment will be initiated. It has all the details between the deal and the settlement instruction that we have set up here will be combined under the transfer window, and this will trigger your messages and your postings as pre-configured. Under messages, because I didn't set up any messages, it's showing blank. My posting window is showing blank as well, because my transfer is still on a verified status. I'm going to settle my transfer, since a trigger for the CSTA settled event that we've created is a settled transfer. So here is my posting. I'm just double clicking on the posting so that you can see the information that's attached to it. So every posting will have a posting ID, description of the event that's created. You'll have the trade ID attached to the posting, the book, and the event that triggered this particular posting. We'll have the dates applicable to it, and you can see that this posting has been created in South African time at 10:29. These are the accounts that we have pre-specified with debit account, that is the Settle account or the Nostro account that I have attached. You could see here, there is nothing on top section because for Nostro accounts, we don't have child account, we only use a master account. So that is the previous section where I showed you Settle accounts are always shared among all transactions. That's why we use the master account. But if we look at the credit account, which is a training accounting interest account, you could see here, this is the child account that's being created. And that is account ID that's associated with it. Account ID is very important in Calypso, as every posting that's being created will be attached to an account ID, and the balance report or the trial balance report is aggregated or displayed based on account ID. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to open this account ID and show you what it looks like in a bigger screen. This is the account, the child account that is created, and this will be the original account that we initially created. The child account, as per the original account's attribute definition, you could see here it's saying Andile PO tilde ZAR tilde the account name and tilde the book specified. If I have to open this original account on a separate screen, you could see here, these are the attributes that I have defined. And this is the child account that's been created using this rule. And for every child account that's being created in Calypso, it will always reference back to the original account or to the master account that we initially displayed. So that's basically how we link accounts to book link to accounting rules, events, and eventually to generating postings. For the next example that I'm going to be booking, I'm going to stop the accounting engine and see what happens when you book a deal and when the accounting engine is down. I'm sure most of you have heard with Calypso team members, or if you're working in Calypso, everybody says Calypso is an event-driven system. So the event that's being triggered as you book a deal to the accounting engine, so accounting engine can consume those events and action as per the accounting rules. That is what we're going to be covering the next 5 minutes or so. I'll be stopping the accounting engine and the balance engine. And I'll be booking a foreign currency simple transfer deal. I'll use my bank USD as counterparty. Processing organization stays the same, and the transfer subtype as well, it can stay the same. My settlement instruction is not speaking by default. Let me just check. Okay, we're good to go. I'm just gonna validate my deal. As you could see at the back of the deal, a transfer has been created and it's on a verified status. There is no posting created so far. I'm going to settle my transfer. And you could see here, transfer is settled. But if I go to my posting, there is no posting generated yet. And that's because I have stopped the accounting engine. If you go to monitoring your accounting postings, you could see here, accounting engine. There is a trade and there is a transfer event that has been sent to the accounting engine, but it hasn't consumed it because the engine is down. If I want to know the details of those events, I'll go to unconsumed events window. You could see accounting engine is coming up. And these are all the events that have been sent by booking those deals and hasn't been consumed yet. So as Calypso processes, once I start the accounting engine, as it processes those events, if there is no rules attached to it, or if there's nothing for pending deals that accounting rule can pick up, or there's no event, it will just disregard it. But for this, for the settled payment, we know that there is an accounting rule already defined for it. It will consume this event and create the applicable accounting entries. So I'm going to start the accounting engine now. I'll leave the balance report for now. This is starting up. Okay, engine is up. The posting should come through soon. Let's just go and check under pending events. You could see here only the balance engine is waiting for an entry to be processed, but the accounting engine has processed everything. Here you go. The USD posting that we've created is posted now. And same process as per previous. The posting window captures the same information every time you book a deal. And I have the debit account, which in this case has used the USD Nostra account because I have predefined it to pick this Nostra account on my settlement instruction. And the training account interest has picked a new child account, which is for USD currency and for the book Andile FCY instead of Andile FCY. Next section that we'll be covering is the posting report. Posting report is a report that shows you all the posting created on a particular day in a particular book or in a particular currency with posting report is very useful on a day-to-day basis, but because it shows all the postings for the day, and unless you put a criteria on, it can be very heavy. We create usually hundreds and thousands of postings on a daily basis. I'm going to put as a criteria posting creation today, and I'll be loading all the postings. So you could see here, we've created 2 postings. For one is ZAR, and the second one was USD for the same amount. And these are the accounts that we've debited and credited. I'm going to add a column called process flags. This is one of the very useful functions within Calypso. So if you could see the first process flag, the first 2 letters are set to YY. What that means is, it means this particular posting has been added to the balance report and the child account has been updated. But in the last one, it's all set as NN, the first 2 letters, which stands for debit and credit balance update. Since we've stopped our balance engine, it's still showing NN. And if I have to load my balance report now, it will not show the balances here. I'm going to go and start the balance engine. And look if there is any pending events. You could see here the balance engine has consumed the postings now. Okay, so the final leg of our session would be viewing the balance report. Before that, let me just go to the posting report and reload the postings again. You could see here that flag has been updated to a Y and Y. What this means is both postings have been added to our balance report. Under Report Launcher, that is where we open our balance report. I've already created an Undelayed training template. I'll be loading the balance for today, from yesterday actually. It takes a bit of time to open the balance report. Okay, finally here. So you could see here my processing org is Undelayed PO training. This is the account ID that's linked to all the child account that's been created. And you could see here, we have different concatenation of the attributes criteria. So what Calypso does is, if there is an account ID that already has a concatenation applicable to the trades that we're saving or to the posting that it's saving, it goes and adds it to that balance. If the concatenation doesn't exist, then it will go and create a new child account. So the more attributes that we have on the accounts window, what this means is it will create many account IDs for each child account that it will be creating. So I'm going to open this line. That is the USD currency that we've created. And you could see here my postings being aggregated to create a balance for that particular account ID. So for this particular account ID, I did not have any beginning balance. So you could see here, there are two entries. One was for the 14th that I did yesterday, and one is a posting that I have created today. And this would be the ending balance for that account. And the same principle applies to all the other accounts in the system. And some of the aggregations that you can do here is you can aggregate by currency and you can aggregate by ZAR. And for some of the accounts, if, for example, ISIN is required as a unique criteria or a product type is required for a unique criteria, you can add it under account attributes and it will automatically filter here and you can use it for your report aggregation on your balance report. Okay, this is it for me for today. Thank you very much for bearing with me. I hope you really enjoyed the session and we can now continue with the Q&A. Over to you, Albert.
Thanks, Millen. Yeah, thanks for appreciate your time and effort you put in there. Yeah, we got a couple of questions that came through on a Q&A. You'll be able to open up the Q&A box at the bottom as well. But before we do that, I'm going to ask another Q&A or poll question to everyone. This will be particularly for the bank users who's using a trial balance and or general ledger. It's not particular to a Calypso, but just a question is, how often do you reconcile your trial balance with your general ledger within the bank? Yeah, Millen, did you see some of the questions that has come through from the top?
Yes.
I'll go through them from and then you can answer them. While we are doing a Q&A, if you have any questions, you are more than welcome to still submit them, and Millen will do her best to answer them. Millen, the first question that came through is, where would you see the break in your reconciliation? Would be I think it was a particular point within the presentation. Is it an IE account info, or is it not a correct posting or an error?
Sorry, Albert, what you've said has just happened. My daughter
So I heard Hadida as well earlier, and I'm sure everyone will have grace with you at this moment. My children have walked into me on a couple of presentations I've done this week as well. If they can answer any accounting questions, they're more than welcome to join in if you've already started to train them on accounting.
Okay, so on the first question, breaks can happen anywhere. It could be on the book link, it could be on the account creation itself, if the proper logic or the proper tick box is not set. It could be on the configuration, it could be on events, it could be on the engine. So there's not really one bullet answer to say this is where accounts break. But usually what we do when we debug is we go to the first step and we follow through what might have gone wrong.
Great. What would you, yeah, so next question. I'm not going to ask questions in the middle here because I'm not going to put you on the spot. Every time I do that, you have a discussion with me afterwards, so I'm going to stop doing that.
Yes.
Next question is, there seems to be a sequence that must be followed, particularly within Calypso, when it comes to the setup. How does one ensure that all the steps and sequences are followed correctly to derive the expected result, especially for someone who is new to Calypso?
I think the question is twofold. The first one is the person, before configuring Calypso, you should exactly know for what products what your accounting expectation is. So for example, if you're valuing FX trade compared to a fixed income trade, the expectation in the process and the accounting rules would be different. So knowing the business side of things is really important. But when it comes to the Calypso side of things, you need to obviously go through the Calypso recommended bank-in-a-box setup. And if there is any error or if there is any additional information that you still require, you can ask Calypso or ask for advice. But there is not, in terms of the process, what I have showed you is basically the basics of the process. But each product has its own events. For example, in Calypso, there are over 100 events that might trigger accounting. And each one has its own criteria, each one has its own triggers, each one has its own product type and subtypes it follows. So it's a bit more complicated than just following a straight through one-pager process.
Quickly going to share the results that we received on the last poll. How often do you reconcile your trial balance? Well, not everyone voted here, I think just because not everyone is bank users, but majority says on a daily basis. 25% of the attendees say on a monthly basis, and one person said that they are not able to perform the reconciliation. What are your thoughts on these results?
I think it looks good. At least majority of the people reconcile either daily or monthly. Daily could be good.
Is daily recommended?
Yes.
Okay. Next question that we have is, yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, I think when and how does automatic child account gets generated? I think you did cover it, but maybe just as a recap, when and how does it?
In my presentation. So once we've created the master account with the concatenation criteria, anything that qualifies for that, if there is a new concatenation result, Calypso goes and creates a new account ID. But if it's the same concatenation criteria in the account already being created, it just goes and adds the amount to that posting or to that balance.
Okay.
So basically, when you first start Calypso, everything is a new, you only have your master account. So for the first day or two, it will just keep on creating child accounts as you go and book deals. But once the majority of the set of the trades are booked and all the criteria have been used, then there won't be any new account IDs being created in most days.
Next question. I think this is a good one. It's what is the function or functions in Calypso which you feel is underutilized from an accounting perspective?
I think for me, it's the balance reports. Most people don't use it as much as they should. And the second part is Calypso is trying to get a hierarchy of accounts so that you can actually generate your income statement and balance sheet from Calypso. And usually we just create a simple account. If we can get into a level whereby we can build a hierarchy within for income and expense and asset and liability, the balance report and all the other reports out of Calypso will be more enhanced.
Okay. Next question, Ajavi. We've got 3 or so more questions, so if you can just bear with us for the last couple of minutes.
Okay.
Can you have more than 7 attributes on account type?
Yes, you may have as many attributes as you can, as long as you've added all the concatenation criteria. The problem with adding many attributes is it means it drills down to Calypso has to do a lot of concatenation and create many child accounts. And what I have noticed from my Calypso years is that the more child accounts that you have in the balance report, the slow that your report gets in terms of loading. So you have to balance between what are the main criteria that you really need to do your aggregation level and stick to it, because the balance report might end up being unusable if there are many account IDs that needs to be loaded.
Okay, last 2 questions, and then you're off the spot here. Are postings in Calypso synonymous to a trial balance? And how does Calypso send these postings on an aggregated level to the general ledger of the bank?
So postings and trial balance are not the same. Trial balance is the report that aggregates all the postings that are in the system based on the predefined criteria that we've just mentioned. In terms of sending it to the general ledger, it would be depending on the bank's IT system. For some cases, we'll use a TXT file to extract all the postings that are generated for the day and send it to the general ledger. Sometimes we'll have an MQ whereby all the postings are sent without aggregation, are just sent directly via MQ to the GL. On some cases, there might even be a download in some sort of download from Calypso and uploading into the GL system. So how we integrate with the general ledger will be a very bank-specific requirement, and it depends on what type of technology that the bank has.
Okay, last question, last but not least, it's a good one to end off with, is if reconciliations are not performed on a daily basis and breaks are identified later, can one rerun processes in Calypso? For example, not all postings generated and did not feed into trial balancing.
Yes, in most cases, we can regenerate the postings, but sometimes, because the deals are obviously moving from one status to another status, and that's what's causing the postings to be generated. If you want to go and regenerate those postings, you might have to reprocess those deals or those transfers that were originally supposed to create those postings. There is a functionality in Calypso where you can go and regenerate certain events, but it doesn't work across all.
Great, Millen, that's it. Any closing thoughts from your side that you maybe want to leave the attendees with?
In closing thoughts, I think every client should be reconciling their trial balance on a daily basis. And if not, at least you should aim to do that. And thanks for joining my webinar. I hope you've learned a few things, and I hope you really enjoyed your stay with us. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. To all the attendees, just a reminder that this was our third session for this month. If you registered for any of the past sessions or maybe didn't register and would like to get access to the recordings, you can just email us. If you have any questions, any thoughts, anything that you may be out of today's session want to discuss in more detail, just email us at axiom@undealersolutions.com. Then next week is the big one. Today was a big one as well from an accounting perspective, but all the technical guys are waiting for the one next week. Craig Edwards, who is our senior software engineer based out of Sydney, Australia, will be presenting to us a state of DevOps, 4 key metrics. So for some of us, accounting might be a black box, DevOps might be the black box. So be sure not to miss it. Go register if you haven't done so already. And then the last one would be delivery versus payment using distributed ledger technology by Eric van der Linde. My name is Albert Jansen from Vieren. Thank you very much for joining us today. Millen, thank you very much. Any questions that you may have, please email us. When you log out, there's going to be a short survey. It shouldn't take you more than 2 or so minutes to complete. If you can just do that, that will help us. Thank you very much. See all of you next week. Bye-bye.